Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Central and South Planning. I'm Councillor Ian Edwards. I'm Chairman of the Planning Meeting, and very good evening to anybody who may be chasing us or following us online. That just lets you know that we are videoed and streamed online through YouTube. Camera's just at the front there, up in the ceiling, pointing this way. So when you're sat where you are, you're not on view. But if you are a petitioner speaking, then you do become visible on the screen. Okay, just a few reminders, and firstly, the reminder to myself and everybody else is please can we turn our mobile phones to silent, and I hadn't done that, so that was an important thing to do. Let's kill the sound off of that as well. Thank you very much. Residents' feedback forms. No, fire alarm. Let's get the important stuff done, really. But fire alarm isn't expected. If it sounds, then it will be an evacuation. We will all be going out together. The best way out is the way you came in, and then we'll assemble back down in the civic forecourt. If for whatever reason you can't get out of those doors, there are fire exits behind us. Okay? But we're here. We will escort you out, so don't worry about it. Residents' feedback forms are provided. They're also online on a drop-down menu. We do encourage completion. It does help us to make sure that our meetings meet the needs of residents. A little bit about the way the meeting is run. The meeting is in fact in two parts this evening. There's the bit about the planning applications that most people are interested in, and that is a meeting held in public, and you're welcome to sit and listen to any of those applications. The second part of the meeting is about enforcement issues, and that is held in a closed session, and we will break between the two, and we will cut the video link at that point. And it's held in a closed session because it's discussions around enforcement matters that could end up in a court of law, and for that reason those discussions are held in private. However, the subject item and the outcome are published, just the discussion that is held in private. So that's the two parts of the meeting, and I'll explain a little bit more as we come to that. This is, as I say, a meeting held in public, not a public meeting. It does mean that there are no general speaking rights, and to address the committee you needed to have submitted a petition, and it will help me now to know if any of you guys are petitioners. Your interest, I will adjust the agenda so that you don't have to sit through the whole evening should you be here for one of the later ones. So can I just ask at this moment which agenda items you're here for, please?
So this is the agent for the mast.
You're for number 7 then, madam. Yep, we will be bringing that forward and taking that first because it is a petition item. Sir, madam at the back? You're just observing. That's fine. You're most welcome to do so. Pleased to have you here. So we'll adjust the running order. Okay, as I was saying, meeting held in public, not a public meeting. You, madam, will have speaking rights as you'll be a respondent to petitioner. Although the petitioner is not present, so I'm sorry you don't. You only have it if they speak. My apologies there. Okay, so no speaking rights tonight. So that keeps it very simple. We should be the only ones doing the chatting. Let's talk about who is in the meeting room here, because there's a number of us. The councillors down each leg of the tables, they're the decision makers. They're the ones that cast a vote. I only cast a vote on applications in the event that there's a dead tie, dead heat, and that's not very often happens. I'll introduce them to you. On my far right-hand side is Councillor Stead, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Chamdal, Councillor Ahmed Boulana and Councillor Yarrow. And on my left-hand side, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dillon, Councillor Katra. They're the councillors, they're the decision makers. Across the top table are the experts that help us with my decision making and the committee's decision making. On my far left-hand side, Jyoti Mehta is our legal advisor. Neil Fraser is our democratic services and records the meeting for us. James Rogers, our head of planning, gives us expert advice. And Mekarani will be presenting each planning application, so we'll go through that. And Syed Shah is our principal highways engineer and assists us with highways matters. That's the team. That's the way we do business. And we have a few items on the agenda to crack through first. but do not fear because they are ordinarily exceptionally speedy. So we'll go to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
No apologies received, Chair.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest, agenda item 2, any interest? Councillor Dillon?
Number 7 is a few doors away from where I live, so I'll be leaving the room because I'll have prejudicial views against it, I suppose. And then number 11, part 2, I have been involved in that one. So
okay, so you'll
be voting on that.
Lovely, thank you very much. Any others? No? Okay, we have minutes to sign and receive. These are the minutes of the 8th of February. All okay? Great, thank you very much. 4 matters that have been notified in advance or urgent. Just for the sake of clarity, it is, I suppose, an urgent item in that the papers came out slightly late. That's the agenda item B, which is the mast. Agenda item 7. Okay? So whether it is or whether it isn't, it's in the meeting. And agenda item 5 is to confirm that there are 2 parts of the meeting. The bit I talked about, the public part, and there is also a private part. We will separate those 2. So we're now going to get into the actual application. So we'll start with, please, number 7, which is the Highways Verge fronting 247 Station Road.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for a 15-metre high telecoms monopole mast situated in the grass verge opposite 247 Station Road. And the siting, if I can just go straight to the plans, 247 Station Road is sited on this side of the road. There's a central reservation, if you like, and then another part of the road, and then Millington Road beyond. Members will have seen these type of masts previously. Standard monopole mast, 15 metres high, and it's sited approximately in this position here. If I can just go back to the plans that would. These are not the application submissions, so if I can just clarify that these are plans that were done by our own in-house technicians. They have put the location of the mast in the wrong position. It is in the central reservation. These are not the submission plans, so the submission plans clearly show the mast to be in that position, and they're the plans that are being considered by members. There's the siting of the mast. There are a couple of cabinets associated with it. They would be permitted development should members grant the application for the masts, but obviously if you don't have the mast, then they're not required. And these are the 2 cabinets that would go with the mast. I can just go straight to the photographs. That's the site here, and that's just, jump forward slightly, that's looking across the road towards the Millington Road industrial area, and on the other side of the road you've got the residential properties. So that's the actual siting. There is quite a bit of street furniture, as members can see, the mast, the cameras, the barriers, so on, and your officers feel that in this location it would add to the clutter, and that is the reason why it's recommended for refusal. There is a second reason for refusal relating to the site search, but if I can just bring members' attention to the addendum sheet, we have received additional information from the applicants regarding the site search, which states that they did attempt to find a site on Millington Road and the industrial estate, but were not successful, and for that reason we feel that reason 2 should now be removed. So the application is only recommended for refusal with 1 reason. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask our Head of Planning a little bit of an awkward question? These masts seem to be a necessary requirement. I imagine each of us turned off a mobile phone. We each use them. They are a necessary feature of everyday life, so they need to go somewhere. We have many examples of where these cabinets are on pavements. This is not on a pavement. It's in a central reservation. It's with trees, so there's a degree of screening. In those circumstances, what is your assessment of our likelihood of winning on an appeal? Should it go to appeal on this ground?
Our success rate at appeal with telecom masts varies. One of the key determinants is it in a conservation area or not. If it's in a conservation area, then we have a strong track record at appeal. This site's outside of a conservation area, so it partly depends on the constraints. So the first slide had the constraints map, and this site doesn't have any particular constraints, i.e. greenbelt conservation area. So that would have a bearing. So that to the left, or what you see shaded on this plan is industrial business area. So that's not a particular constraint, such as a sort of greenbelt or conservation area or a listed building. So that would weigh against us in terms of the likelihood of an appeal being dismissed or allowed. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you. Nice politician's answer there. Okay, I've said my piece. I open it to colleagues now for discussion, please. Councillor Carter.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just a matter of interest on this. I know we've got it on refusal. It's a facility that is maybe required because, like yourself has quite stated, is use of the phones and etc. So what's the consequences? We're not allowing that to go down there. Are they allowed to put it somewhere else, or is it just something that we can't let it go on that actually conversation? Or how is it going? What's the impact then?
I mean, they would need to look at whether there are other sites available, and one of the things that they do say in the email that we received from the agent is that they contacted the owners of the Millington Road Industrial and Business Area and didn't get a reply. That doesn't necessarily rule out any sites in that area. It does mean that maybe they need to push a bit more to see if there is sites available in that area.
Councillor Yarrow, you were both we're now splitting distance, and then Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the problems with putting these masts up is it's not just the mast, it's the general clutter that occurs with the mast, and that is the boxes where all the electronics are. If this was rejected and they won at appeal, they would that allow them to put 5 boxes up there? Whereas if we accepted this, that we are accepting it with 2 boxes only. And is that a point that we should bear in mind and say, okay, you can have it, but 2 only, and that's the end of it?
Good question. There's 2 points I'd like, firstly, planning to cover on what would be the consequence of this going to appeal. Would we be able to ask for conditions? And secondly, a legal comment on whether or not it would be appropriate for us to put any condition about removing PD rights. Maybe more planning. Is it more planning? Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of it going to appeal and us requesting conditions, we can clearly do that. It would then be up to the inspector as to whether he agreed or put those conditions on. In terms of the PD rights that are associated with these masts, there is a limit in terms of the size of the cabinets that can be installed, but you could get more than the 2 that are there at the moment. So if members felt that it was acceptable in principle and that 2 was the maximum that they would like, then there is the possibility of removing PD rights for any more cabinets to be installed.
Thank you. And there will be the legal test or the threshold test, and we can come to that if there is that view. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I think that I wish they had pursued the matter with the owners of the Millington Road industrial and business area. I mean, it is what it says, it's an industrial and business area. So you would hope that this would be of benefit to the companies operating there, because they will surely have offices and new technology, and so it would be a benefit to the people who already occupy that. And I think that they should just persevere a little bit more in trying to make contact with people, because presumably they would have to pay a rent or something like this to be located on that land. So from a business point of view, you know, they're a business company owning this land, presumably they would welcome that. It may just be that it's not got through to the right person. I think this piece of land, it's referred to as a, you know, central verge, which it is, but it's between 2 roads, the main road, Station Road, and then the sort of minor road off that leads to the residential roads. And I think it's the one thing that kind of defines the residential area. You're coming down this busy road from Haystown Centre, which is shortly to be opened and made a through road, I believe, so we'll carry more traffic. And having trees along there makes a break and a shield for the residential area. If you allow 1 mast and 2 cabinets, some other operator is going to come along and possibly, why wouldn't they be allowed a mast and 2 cabinets? At what point do you stop? So I think either you see it as an amenity area. Yes, it's going to have street furniture like railings to safeguard people at crossing points and street lighting, but I think that particularly as there's an industrial and business area opposite, if it was all in the middle of a residential area, I think it would be a rather different matter. But it seems that it just needs a little bit more determination and perseverance, and we might actually get it in the business area where it's going to be directly available to businesses there. So I think the fact that people have signed a petition about this, I believe, of objection, local residents, shows that they do value that land, and I'm quite happy to go along with this reason for refusal. I think those points could be argued at appeal, and hopefully residents would be able to come forward and state their view about it. And it's good to see residents do value their environment in the way that this suggests. So I'm happy with the recommendation.
I'd just like to say, with regards to the petition, it's not clear on the grounds. They're just objecting. I have no interpretation of the reasons for objection, and therefore it's difficult for me to understand what their case is. I just heard I object.
Well, yes, I think they did object on grounds of clutter, didn't they? That there was too much going on there.
Delivering democratic services, making a system. It's not to my recollection.
No reasons for objection were listed on the petition.
So it was a petition received that just says, I object, we object. And as a consequence, it's difficult I believe, to add too much weight to that, because the grounds are not particularly clear.
Yeah, but clearly they don't like it. That's what I object means.
But it could be that they're objecting on grounds of health, and we know that takes us down a completely different avenue, and of which we have less case, because we know that when it comes to health impacts, there you go. So, that could be the reason for the objection. I just don't know. And in the absence of that clarity, it's not easy to put too much weight, from my perspective, on it.
Right. Wasn't there a covering letter with this which referred to the clutter or something? I seem to recall something.
There's a note that says we refer to the accompanying letter, but the only letter listed was the consultation letter inviting comment sent by the Hillingdon's planning officers.
Just clarify, there was an objection received, which was a a single objection, which amongst other things talked about clutter. The petition didn't have reasons attached to, so it was an objection, but there wasn't any reasons attached to it.
Right, so on the objection it spoke about clutter. Well, did the person who sent in a separate letter, were they also signing the petition? Do we know? Has that been checked?
I'm not clear that takes us too far, because
Well,
it
it might
doesn't
be.
substantiate whether
petition?
the grounds that the other people were signing it. I'm just making the point that the petition, there's nobody here to clarify what they're petitioning about and the grounds for it. The petition itself doesn't clarify what they're against. It just says we are against. And as a consequence, I don't know that it carries the same weight as if somebody was here, or it had been clearly explained on the grounds of their objection. And that is the point I'm making. Councillor Yarrow.
Yes, can I just raise another point, Chairman? Page 4 states some of the reasons why we feel that it should be rejected, and we've eliminated one of them. But number 3, it says there is no reasonable possibility of sharing existing facilities, but there is no detail of where the other facilities are, and who they belong to, and whether they were asked, and whether they got a refusal. They just said there is no reasonable possibility. Now, I think that needs to be explored a little bit further, because if we're going to reject this, we need some firm evidence that we're rejecting it for the right reasons.
I hear where you're coming from. My understanding, and I will be very happily put right by the experts around me, is that the grounds of refusal would be because of the harm being caused to the amenities as a consequence of the clutter. And it's for us to believe that there is harm being caused. Correct me if I have got that wrong.
Yeah, so, I mean, an inspector's going to give more consideration to any issues regarding harm than I think they would in reality regarding the second reason, not least because of the correspondence that we've received.
Yes. But these are reasons for rejecting it, and why it is actually being put forward. It's quite clear there is a need for the development in that location, not necessarily in that very location, but in that area. They need a new mast in order to get the proper coverage. There is no reasonable possibility of sharing. Well, who says there's no reasonable possibility of sharing? I don't know where the masts are. I can't see whether there's one a mile away, half a mile away, a tenth of a mile away, or whatever. Where is the map? They've talked about the coverage area. We should be able to see that as well. I just want to make sure that if this gets rejected, we've got every possibility of winning the appeal. That's the key to this. And it says the appearance of the downscape or landscape is not seriously harmed. Well, yes, it probably isn't seriously harmed, but what we're trying to establish is why there. And the reasons why it has to be there is because somebody says there's nowhere else to put it. Well, I need proof of that.
Mr. Ronnie.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that the information that is submitted normally includes, and would have included in this case, locations of masts within the area, and information as to whether it was possible that coverage from those masts could be shared. So the fact that there isn't a reason for refusal based on that is I think evidence that that information was provided, and that we were satisfied that there wasn't a possibility of mast sharing in this case.
Thank you. Do you wish to come in?
I mean, this is not specific to this application, but normally we find with the telecom operators, I mean, this is one of the main operators, they do actively explore mast sharing. Where we sometimes have an issue is when they ruled out mast sharing, whether they then do a thorough enough search of other options. But in my experience, I mean, obviously we deal with lots of these type of applications that the operators do. The optimum solution to them is to share a mast.
Can I just go back? And I'm just a little puzzled because the comments that we've been talking about would tend to suggest that we were going to accept it, not refuse it. and yet we're talking about the recommendation. Let me just turn to the right page. The recommendation is refusal, which means we don't believe what has been said. Yet what's been said, you've obviously looked at it and seen the maps and seen the area and seen where these are, which we haven't seen, and you've come to a conclusion, no, it's got to be refused. But yet we're now arguing that everything's hunky-dory, and that there's no reason at all why it couldn't be accepted.
But no,
Sorry, before you come in, the argument I have not put forward is that it's hunky-dory. The argument that I am putting in, that the refusal ground, the only refusal ground that being put forward in the report is the street clutter, which amounts to the appearance of the townscape or landscape is seriously harmed. And I'm just inviting reflection on that and our resilience at appeal. And that is all I'm doing. Mr. Roger.
so what myself and Mr. O'Reilly are saying, that we're only recommending one refusal reason, and that's the clutter and associated with visual harm. So the steer I would give would be to members to focus on that issue.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. The consultation revealed one response. Proposed mast is likely to distract drivers along Station Road. I don't think we would give that a lot of weight, because there are a lot of things, and this is not bright red with flashing lights or anything. Height and appearance of mast and associated cabinets will have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the street scene and add more street clutter to the area. Well, it certainly will add more street clutter to the area. Is it going to have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance? That's what we're considering. The applicants have not carried out a full site selection of the local area. Millington Road is a more suitable location. Well, I actually agree with that point. The applicants have not fully considered sharing of masts. That's the point that Councillor Yarrow makes, and we don't have information about that. Inadequate consideration of potential impact on trees along the grass verge, which provide a visual screen and enhance the street scene. Well, that's something that I personally feel, so I agree with that point that this objector has made about this. But how that is answered in the report, it says that the design would be in keeping with surrounding streetlight columns, but it would add to existing street furniture and trees within the surrounding area. This would increase street clutter on the grass verge, which would impact on the character and appearance of the immediate street scene and surrounding area. So that is answered by the officers in the report. And then, impact on neighbours in 708, it says the proposed development would not significantly impact on residential amenity in terms of loss of light or over-dominance. Well, we're not considering loss of light or over-dominance, so that isn't an issue. So I feel that it's only been partially answered in the report, but I do agree with some of those points, the majority of those points that were made by the objector. I think that it's our duty to take those seriously and examine them. And on balance, and I know we have to say on balance, I do think that that is a valuable strip of amenity. It's got mature trees. It does define the residential area. It has a function as a piece of amenity. It's not just a bald bit of grass. It is planted. It's quite wide. And so I think if people think, oh, this is an easy place to put this kind of street furniture, I think it will attract more. I mean, we're going into an age of more technology, not less. And how could we refuse others there? I think that, there would be a very fine distinction in this matter, and then you're going to get a row of masts and cabinets where you're meant to be seeing trees. So my view, I do have a view about this, and I'm happy with this refusal and would be quite happy for that to be tested at appeal. I take the points that the head of planning makes, that it's in conservation areas where obviously there is more attention to issues of amenity, issues of conservation. Here, I think that there is an issue of amenity, and so we can hopefully fully consider that.
So what I haven't done thus far is actually reinforce that there was a reason why we recommended refusal, and it is because this mast, we feel as officers, would become a focal point on the skyline and at that location. So there's other mast proposals we've dealt with where, because of their location, they wouldn't become a focal point in terms of they'd be lost amongst trees or other buildings, but because of the siting on the central reservation, I think this would actually become a focal point. I mean, it is a 15-metre mast, and
Thank
so
you.
I think it
Thank you
would
for
be
that.
harmful.
Yeah, I think
Let's
that's very helpful.
start to
hear
draw
that.
the conversation together now and to begin to form a view on whether or not this application causes sufficient harm for us to refuse it. Councillor Stead, you indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. We've had various views from across the table about this mast, and it sounds to me as if there isn't enough information to answer the questions that have cropped up during the discussions. My own personal view is that I can't see too much of a problem with it. You've got one side where you've got an industrial unit which isn't too worried about where the mast is, and the other side you've got houses, but my recollection of what we've seen in the past, we've had stuff positioned in far worse places than we have there. I think we've reached a stage where perhaps we ought to start deciding whether we want to say yes or no to this application, and then take a decision on that.
Okay, we do need to bring it together. The recommendation, the report before us, which is what we're going for, and let me, if I can, I'd be uncomfortable in us constructing further refusal reasons in light of what has been said by officers. So we have the one refusal reason before us. It's whether or not, as a committee, you feel that this application, the mast and the cabinets, add sufficient clutter to the street scene here that it amounts to harm and therefore amounts to serious harm and therefore is against our policy and therefore should be refused. That is the decision we're making. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I move officers' recommendation.
Thank you very much. That's helpful. Councillor Chapman, you're seconding. Okay, show of hands, please. That's everybody. Thank you. Okay, let's return, if we may, please, to agenda item 6. I'm sorry, that's going to reshuffle the cards.
In the right order.
Well anticipated then, thank you. 212 the High Street.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for a change of use from retail to a Thai massage clinic, which falls within use class D1. Members will note from the history section and the opening paragraphs in the summary that an application for the loss of this retail unit to a fish and chip takeaway was refused and then dismissed at appeal not very long ago, approximately a year ago. And in that, the inspector considered that the loss of the retail unit would affect the vitality and viability of this parade and therefore dismissed the appeal. We don't feel that enough time has elapsed or enough sufficient information has been provided to us to show that there's been active marketing of the unit for us to change our decision or our recommendation from the previous. So it is recommended for refusal. Members will recall the unit. What the inspector did say in dismissing the appeal was that there were no, when he visited the site, and at that time there were no vacant units in the parade, so it was clearly a thriving parade, and he didn't feel that the loss of another retail unit would be acceptable in that instance. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Colleagues? Discussion, comments? Councillor Dunn?
It's clearly not going to find a use if they don't advertise it. There's no advertising hoarding there at the moment. It's just boarded up. I have no problem with the officer's recommendation, and I move it.
Agreed. Councillor Stead?
If that's the proposal, then I would second that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Show of hands, please, on that one. That's everybody. That one is refused. And we go now to number 8, number 2, Hersey's Road.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the retention of the building as a 12-room bed and breakfast hostel. There's a long and convoluted history on this, going back 15, 20 years. And it's hopefully set out in an understandable manner on pages 24, 25 and 26. Members were sent a copy of the enforcement appeal decision of 2011, and in that decision the inspector, I suppose you could say, watered down the requirements of the enforcement notice to require it to go back to what it was, in essence. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to work out what it was, because we considered it to be a 2-bed residential unit. The inspector said, well, it wasn't clear that it was that. He didn't specify what he thought it was. The history shows that it's been in use as rooms of some sort for 15 years or more, and therefore, really, to bring an end to the matter, we feel that this is a reasonable use for this site. It is an isolated site. It's not a site where you might argue that residential should be the use. So we feel that it's a reasonable use for the site, and it allows us to add a number of conditions which will hopefully tidy up the site and its appearance. And for that reason, we're recommending approval. Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Yeah. It is an isolated site. That's an electricity substation next to it, and then you've got some commercial units with residential above. And then you've got the main A40 access here, and then leading up to the A40 there. So it's quite a busy road at that point as well. If I can just go back, that's a historical. But if I show you the state of the site currently, you'll see that what it allows us to do is to close off that, provide a reasonable boundary treatment along there, and also to tidy up the parking area. And these are the internal photographs of it at the moment. So hopefully once we get the details sorted with the conditions, then it can be tidied up and its appearance can be made better. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rani. Councillor Yarrow?
Thank you, Chairman. It happens to be right at the end of a road in my ward, and I've always thought it was just an Indian restaurant that was there. I didn't realise what was going on behind it, because that's a place that I've never actually managed to get to. I have no problem. We're actually tidying this situation up, and we're going to know exactly what's there now. It's going to be a 12-bed hostel / hotel-y thingy, and I would move the officer's recommendation. It's tidying up something that should have been done a while ago.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I agree with that. Is there going to be some sort of soundproofing to upgrade the facilities for residential, as it's so close to the M40 slip? Or would that be coming under building regs or something?
Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rani?
Should we advise about that?
If it was a normal C3 residential use, you might consider that, but this is a bed and breakfast hostel, so we wouldn't...
As you may know, many people are in bed and breakfast for a considerable amount of time, and because of the shortage of housing, including with children. And I've visited a number of bed and breakfast places where we have those families, and noise is one thing that is, goes against the use if it's going to be for temporary accommodation. which I think that this would be because there's such a huge demand for it.
The only thing I'd say is that we did receive a petition in support of the application. That petition was signed by people who were mostly from overseas, so it would appear that this occupied by on a sort of very short-term basis. There was only one who might be considered a resident of the borough. The rest were from China, from India, from various other countries. So it is, I think, occupied on a very short-term basis. However, if members did feel that a condition on noise insulation was necessary, then there is a standard one which could be sort of tailored, if you like, along the lines of conditions 3 and 4 to be added to it.
I would ask that be added, because although the clientele may be from overseas at the present time, there is possibly a strong possibility of it being bed and breakfast for people that we have to house, as it's so convenient. It's in the borough and there's such a demand for it. So I would ask that we put that on if other members are minded to go with the recommendation and prove this.
I think it's a very fair point. My own opinion is that just because you're staying in a hostel or bed and breakfast, you shouldn't have to have such substandard accommodation. But the flip side, and one that I feel I must test as chair, is how resilient we could be defending that appeal, recognising that it's been in use as a hostel in the present condition for the last 16 years.
I wouldn't actually have a problem in this case adding a condition, as Meg outlined, because part of the approach we've taken to this is that we could have taken a very strict approach based on the inspector's appeal decision, albeit it was unclear. So there wouldn't have been, hence we started looking at other options, but the option we feel is best as officers is to go down the approval but with appropriate conditions. So the steer I was always going to give tonight was for members to focus on the planning conditions and consider whether there's any extra you would think are appropriate. And
Councillor Yarrow.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I mean, the council has already, or the planning department's already decided that some changes should be made, because there's a section in that there are no facilities for the disabled. So we're actually going to ask for that to be put in. So I see no reason why they can't put some soundproofing in at the same time. So I think we've already recognised that part. It's going to be slightly different, perhaps a little bit better.
Thank you, Councillor Stead.
Yeah, I believe there's been a proposal to accept this. I'll second that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Show of hands, please. It's duly amended, delegated to the head of planning, the additional condition to improve the soundproofing. That's everybody. Yes, thank you. Okay, number 2, Castle Avenue, Useley.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a application for the conversion of the dwelling to a 7-bedroom house in multiple occupation. In terms of the facilities provided, the rooms all comply. The communal rooms are all provided. If I can just go to the plans, the layout shows the kitchen, lounge area, and then the bedrooms upstairs. And then an additional kitchen as well on the upper floors. So all the communal facilities are in line with the council's SPG as the size of the bedrooms. The issues relate to parking and amenity space. In terms of parking, a layout has been provided. It doesn't quite work in the way the traffic engineers would like, and so a condition is required which sets or provides the information. The traffic engineer is satisfied that the space is available to comply with that condition and provide the required parking spaces. In terms of the amenity space, the most private area is this area to the rear. That amounts to approximately just over 50 square metres, which obviously doesn't comply. The requirement is 105 in total. We feel that this area here could be privatised sufficiently for it to be used for amenity space to bring it virtually up to the standards. So for that reason we are recommending approval. In terms of the amenity space, I would say that although not in connection with multiple occupation, we have had recently 2 or 3 appeal decisions relating to amenity space standards and our refusals based on the increase in the number of bedrooms in dwelling houses, and we haven't won any of those. So, and usually the inspectors cite that there is open space available within close vicinity of the site, which is the case in this particular location. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. The sharp-eyed might have noticed that the plan in our planning pack is different to the one that's up on the screen. Just note that, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to refer to the plans because the ones in our planning pack show 8 bedrooms. Would you mind returning to the ground floor plan, please? I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's the lounge.
Well, it's not because it's got a bathroom off it. It's got this.
Yeah.
All the ensuite facilities are here. They've all got ensuite facilities.
That would have to be allowed because that would.
The point is that in planning terms we can't allow something, and it's the plans that we approve, and then expect them not to use it. It's fine to put lounge on, but it's clearly a room with ensuite facilities, which is most unusual. I've never been in a lounge with ensuite facilities, I'm happy to say. So I think it's another bedroom, and so we would need some change to these plans in order to make it 7 bedrooms. What is shown is 8 bedrooms. They just call that room a lounge, but it is in fact a bedroom.
It's not for me to argue the planner's case. However, I note that there is no communal toilet downstairs, which is typically a layout of a house of this size, other than the one off what is presently marked as the lounge. It's not as though that replicates another toilet and hand basin that you might typically find under the stairs or in the hall or somewhere else. The application is for 7 bedrooms. It is what it is stated, and it is conditioned for 7 bedrooms. So our suspicion that the lounge is going to be used as an 8th bedroom, I don't feel is well. I'll invite comment from our head of planning there.
So we did try and get the plans revised further so that this would have been, how can I put it, a cleaner approval, but the agent and applicant wouldn't revise the plans, and because I know they think that they believe the council wouldn't have any reasons to refuse this and it would be allowed at appeal. What we've done as officers is we've recommended a comprehensive suite of planning conditions. So I think we've tied this, if members agree with approval, we've tied it down stricter than I fear an inspector might.
Thank you for that. Did that answer a question or your point?
It did, in a way, that possibly we might have more control now through the conditions. But the thing is, if it is found to be used by 8 people, and presumably there will be inspections of these properties, as I believe has to happen, then would we enforce against that? And what would our position be, having allowed a room with an ensuite bathroom? It looks like
I think, I mean, that the condition is
a bit here.
Sorry, the condition is very clear. It should be 7 bedrooms, 9 persons maximum. occupying. So if that was exceeded in any way, then there are two options for us, which is an enforcement notice or a breach of condition. And either way, we could take enforcement to comply with those conditions.
Can I just ask for further clarity? Is there any requirement for a common area or lounge on an HMO of this size?
Yes, so there is, and the reason cross-references the supplementary guidance. So I'm confident that if they breach that condition, we could take action.
Okay, Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair. Very, very briefly, I understand they have to have a lounge, considering that we got 7 bedroom. Is there no other area they could have had the toilet or facilities? Why in the lounge? Because I think we all agree the fact it's very, very unusual you would have, this sort of facilities in the lounge. I never heard or seen anything like it.
The point is well made, and we might all be able to look at the plans and suggest ways in which we might tidy it up. However, the plans are those before us, and these are the ones we have to consider, and we should take in mind the advice given by our head of planning concerning the conditions. Sorry, if I may just take Councillor Chamdal and then I'll come to Councillor Willan.
Thank you, Chairman. I think with the experience that we all got, I think we know where that could be heading, but it does say it's a lounge, and I would like to move this on and go with the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Rulana, you wish to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. If we can tidy up the parking for car parking spaces, if there are no additional parking is required, and it's a 7-bedroom. Can I ask how many occupants will be in the building in 7 bedrooms? How?
Condition 3 specifies that the maximum should be 9.
Thank you very much. 9 people.
Okay. So I do not hesitate to move with the officer's recommendation to approve this.
So you're seconding, are you?
Yes.
So it's a proposer and seconder, but do you wish to come in before we take the vote, Councillor Duncan?
I do, because I think under building control, so this would have to go to building control, you're not allowed to have a bathroom or toilet coming directly off a habitable room, unless it is a bedroom and it's en suite. I think there has to be at the door, so you go through a door, so that, yes. And I believe that is a requirement. So that would reduce the lounge more, presumably. What does that do to the size of the lounge and the number of people and all the rest of it, please?
In terms of what's required, it's not a particularly large requirement, because in terms of the size of the lounge that's required, I'm just getting to it. I believe it's maximum or minimum of 10 square metres, and this is well above that, so they could make amendments and still comply.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Do you wish to come in another point before we take? Yes, Councillor.
I was been searching for the information that I thought I'd read on here, where there's something that says that the lounge has to be available to residents at all times. Therefore, nobody should be using it as a separate place to sleep. But I can't find it now. I'm now I'm looking for it. It might, it may very well have been on another report, but. Should we not have something like that in there? The lounge is the lounge.
It's in there.
Where is it then?
Point 3.
Point 3. Page 34.
Yeah, second paragraph where it says for use for all residents and not for habitable sleeping purposes.
Right. Okay. So it makes it that makes it absolutely clear that it should be used. Although I agree, I've never experienced a toilet like that off a living room, and clearly it's on my travels around abroad, I might actually have come across a room where it was like that, but it certainly wasn't in a hotel.
Okay. Discussion. We've moved and seconded. We're ready to take the vote. Enough points made. Okay. Let's cast a vote on that. That's everybody. Thank you very much. Agenda item 10, please. Number 10A, High Street, Useley.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will know this site well. It's of recent construction. It was constructed on the ground floor. That's the front of it. It was constructed as 2 retail units. It's not been used as that ever, I don't think. Was it? And the reason probably is because it is separated from the rest of the high street by the bridge, and it's not really part of the shopping centre. So for that reason, we're being asked to consider 2 flats in there. The flats all comply, the parking is compliant, and therefore we're recommending approval. The 2 flats are in that location there.
Councillor Duncan.
I move officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Show of hands, please. Thank you. We need to learn from these experiences and not put some such requirements on developers when they're not appropriate or prove not to be appropriate. Okay, we're now moving into part 2. And